Good afternoon. For those that this is the first time you've met me, my name is Michael Gibson. I'm the police chief here at the City of Mount Dora. As most of you are aware, members of the Mount Dora Police Department, the Lake County Sheriff's Office, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the State Attorney's Office, they didn't respond yet, responded to 161 Lake Margaret Circle in reference to a double homicide a couple of days ago. The victims of the homicide are identified as Daryl and Cheryl Getman. And if you could, take a moment and look at Mr. and Mrs. Getman. They're a married couple. They're 83 and 80 years old. As you can see by the photograph, they were enjoying their golden years of retirement. Something that we kind of all look forward to, I think, right? However, in this case, the golden years of Daryl and Sharon were tragically cut short by a ruthless and senseless double homicide. So what have we learned? On December 30th, 2023, at about 3 p.m., a black female dressed in a particular way was escorted out of the complex by Waterman Security. She was escorted out through an opening in the rear of the community. On the same date, at about 4:14 p.m., the female was captured on security camera on Lake Margaret Circle again. She was wearing the same outfit, very unique. At about 10:58 p.m., on the same date, this person of interest entered the facility of 301 Lake Margaret Circle, and that's the big tower up in the front. She went to apartment 4105, knocked on the door, made contact with a female occupant. This person of interest asked, "Can I take a shower?" The alert tenant panicked, got scared, as I would, and she hit her alarm button. Of course, security responded and the police responded. The person of interest, or prior to us responding and security responded, the person of interest said, "Did you just call 911? And she said, "Yes." She took off. On her way out, grabbed a set of keys out of, I presume, a table sitting by the door, grabbed a set of keys that belonged to a car and belonged to a mailbox. Then, of course, the police responded, security responded, area check was conducted, nothing. Fast forward about 3 hours, almost to the minute. December 31st, 2:02 a.m. Mr. and Mrs. Getman's vehicle was photographed leaving the facility. About 10 or 11 minutes later, this same female that we had been talking about, by the way, she pulls out, I say she, the green car pulled out, made a northbound turn on Donley. About 10 or 11 minutes later, this female that we had been talking about previously walks back in. Security would not allow her back in, sent her packing. However, they were alarmed, and they did follow her down to the edge of the property where she made a right-hand turn onto an access to like a service road for construction, and then lost sight of her. And the rest of the story, I think we've talked about over the past couple of days. About 4 p.m. that evening, the Mount Dora Police Department and responded to the residents and found you know, it's I think about, because I retired once, I think about those golden years So this, I do take this personal. Members of the Mount Dora Police Department, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and then of course now the state attorney's involved. This requires unlimited, countless number of hours on the road and court orders after court orders. You know what we had to do. Yesterday during our press conference, I got a phone call. We got the car, and we have a driver. I'm pretty confident in the investigation at this point. That's as far as I should go. I'm pretty confident. At this point in the investigation, where do we go from here? Your big question is, what is this person's name? Well, the investigation is still very fast moving, fast breaking, and I'm not going to release the person's name yet. They are in custody. They are in another state. The state attorney stayed up all night last night and pulled every string he could because it had to be a Florida warrant. We had to have to extradite and all this stuff. So thank you for your hard work. Thank you. When all you have is probable cause, the Constitution guarantees people a right to get out, and we would have been in a hard spot if not for your state attorney. This person will be extradited back to the state of Florida in the coming days, and let me explain why. There's investigative things that we have to do for the same reasons I wouldn't identify a lot of stuff. It's because it would tarnish our investigation. It would upset some of the legal documents and things that the state attorney has to do, and it could potentially impact something at a prosecution level. So as I promised, as I get information and as I can release it to you and it doesn't impact the arrest and the investigation and the prosecution, I'll release it. So she will be extradited back to the state of Florida. With that said, kind of before I go to questions, and I'm going to bring my partner, Special Agent in Charge Lee Massey, and of course the state attorney up, and as we but there's still aren't going to talk about. But I'm going to steal something from my friend Lee Massey, and he is my friend of 30 years. The analogy is this. This is a 3,000-piece puzzle, and we simply put together the corners and the sides. We have a long way to go. It's a 3,000-piece puzzle with a whole bunch of things in the middle. Before I close, one big question you want to going back to the this person of interest. This person of interest has there's no known connection between her and the city of Mount Dora. Very limited connection between anything in Central Florida, hit or miss. We're somewhat confident in saying that she was passing through. She was passing through, and and she upset our lives. With that said, we're open to questions. Lee, if you could come up, and Bill, if you can come up, and just remember that there are things that we just won't talk about. Go ahead, questions.
Chief, isn't it true that your person of interest has been arrested multiple times in both Eustis and Mount Dora in the last year?
We have no information that this person has been arrested in Eustis at all.
And your agency didn't arrest her on December 27th?
No, that is not correct.
Okay.
Chief, just so I'm clear, there's a lot of moving parts here. You're talking about one woman who was found, escorted out, same woman came in, went up to the apartment, grabbed keys, same woman that you have in custody, some now out of state, correct?
That's correct.
The keys that they were taken, is that from like a security guard's office? I mean, the perception here is that they got a hold of keys that allow them access to the other house in the car.
No. So they went to an apartment up in the tower, and they took keys to a car and a mailbox key. That was it.
But not the keys to this car.
No.
So you don't know how they got into the Getman's
That-
house or how they got the Getman's car.
Correct. We don't know at this point.
Chief, many people flat out want to know how were they killed.
Okay. You can imagine we still have a lot of folks to talk to, and that's stuff that will absolutely be put out. But at this point, it's just something that we're going to hold tight. It was a homicide. It was a multiple homicide. They were both killed.
This woman, you're a person of interest. She's a person of interest or a suspect? Clarify, person of interest.
Well, she is arrested for the theft of the vehicle, and she is clearly a person of interest for the homicide.
I was going to say, so she's presently not charged with murder.
That is correct.
You've got her theft of the car, in possession of the car somewhere out of state, and then you're trying to put together a probable cause case for murder in this case.
That is correct.
Okay, so what state and what city?
That is just something we're not going to release at this time.
Okay, then this question is for the state attorney. So, what is the procedure now to get her out of that state, wherever she is, and back here? So what do you have to do?
So every state's different, Frank, and we deal mostly with the southeastern states pretty regularly. There are extradition laws and rules between Florida and the other states, and it's fairly straightforward, the process. So that's kind of as far as I'm going to go. The process has already started. We've put what we need to put into place to make sure that the person is going to remain in custody until we get the person back to Florida. So that's,
You sent somebody up to this other state, I assume.
well, that's actually a law enforcement function. So that's not something that the state attorney did.
So in the right term, the murder charges are pending?
Actually, you know, I'm a little bit, because my position's different, I tend to say less, so I'm not going to answer that. But they're not, right now, as the chief said, the charges are the grand theft of the vehicle, and that's where we're at. I can tell you this much, working with the Mount Dora Police Department, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Sheriff's Office, everybody's really come together, and I'm confident with what they've briefed me and what I know that the investigation is headed in the right direction. You know, everything's being done, you know, by the book, and there's a lot of moving parts, as he said earlier. That's a good example, the 3,000-piece puzzle, Lee. I hadn't heard that before, but that makes sense. So, you know, as a prosecutor, I'm going to make sure that we do it, you know, that everybody's doing everything that they need to do, and when we get a case, if we get a case, it's one that we can put together. So.
I wasn't 100% clear. The person whose apartment they went to, was that the Getman's apartment? Did they actually take a shower, or was that a different residence?
That was a different resident, a different apartment.
Was this a random crime?
It appears it was a random crime.
And we heard from other residents that somebody had come to the door and said they wanted to use a phone charger or charge their phone. You believe this is the same person has been going to multiple apartments?
Our investigation is suggesting that this person made contact with other folks. That is correct.
And no idea why Waterman Village, why the Getmans, why this apartment. I mean, been doing this a long, long time. Most of these have some kind of lineage that you can follow. The random ones are the ones that are truly horrifying. Is that what this is, Chief?
I'm confident it's random, and I'm confident it is random.
Chief,
But-
you seem, go ahead.
But you feel like you've got plenty to keep her where she is while you build a case against her.
I have an unbelievable team. If there is an A team in law enforcement, we got it. With the Mount Dora Police Department, with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, with the state, this state attorney, we have the A team. I'm confident.
Chief, did you know them, and were you able to find out more about who they were?
I did not know them. I have met their children. It's they a beautiful family for sure.
Real quick, how many times was she actually caught or escorted off property? Is it 3 times I'm taking it?
One time, well, we have, remember, we can now go back and look at historical things, so we can identify different times that she may have been on the property. One time she was escorted off.
And then she came back on and security stopped her?
No, one time that security stopped her and escorted her off.
But when she came back in and ended up with this car and left,
That's correct. When she came back in at about the 11, we presume at about the 11 when she was in that apartment, the apartment on the tower, where she took the keys and then fled, there was no contact, no more contact with her.
I know you're trying to play all of your cards close
Yeah.
to the vest. Was this car and this person, who your person of interest, hundreds of miles or thousands of miles away?
A good way, a good ways away, a good ways away.
That's really hard to define.
You can imagine, we did, should be no secret, we sent a couple squads of folks, and it's a long way. They'll be gone a few days.
Chief, how was she taken into custody? Was it a traffic stop? Was there a bolo on the vehicle because it was stolen? Or how was she taken into custody?
All the above. The beautiful thing in law enforcement, especially when you've been around a few years, you have friends all over the country, and you just call in your favors. And
But was it like a traffic infraction that caught their attention?
no,
or
they
they
were in
vehicle?
particular looking for that vehicle.
Why isn't this person being identified, and what, do you have a seal on the extradition proceeding?
I believe there is a seal on the warrant. That is correct.
Can you provide the spelling of the Gitman's names?
I have Getmans, and I'm sorry, Getman. I'm sorry.
And first names?
The first one, Daryl, Daryl, Darryl, and Sharon.
Well, you said Cheryl the first time. Is it Sharon?
Sharon, I could have misspoke. Sharon, Sharon.
Thank you.
Chief, was any weapon found inside the car?
I'm not going to talk about what we collected out of the vehicle. We do have the vehicle.
So, I know that, again, there's a lot of facts that you don't want to disclose at this point. You're trying to build a case. Did it appear that this couple fought back? Was there a violent encounter inside this dwelling?
Those of you that have been around me for a while know that I've been to a scene or two, and it was not a comfortable scene. So, but in terms of how hard they fought, it's hard to know at this time. We're still waiting for all the forensic stuff to come back.
But I mean, she wasn't sneaking away with a car. This was a confrontation inside that home. We have two folks that were killed, murdered inside the home.
Do you believe, it may be way too early, but do you believe the motive was robbery? He was trying to get money, or?
There may be some things. I'm confident about this. I'm confident that the homicide will be solved. Some of the side stories, and I hate to characterize it like that, we may never know.
How old was this person of interest?
Not young. I'll keep it at that. Not old, but not. I'm not going to tell you that. I shouldn't tell you the age. But not an 18-year-old kid.
Okay, I'm still trying to piece everything together here. Can you go back and clarify how many times she did get access onto the property, and at what point was police involved? Why was
Sure.
she not removed for trespassing?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. These are things that we know as I stand here, and this case is still unraveling. We have some fine tech folks from FDLE digging even further. Going back to the chronology that I created, so I could kind of give you an idea. We understand that we have a 3 p.m. on the 30th, a 3 p.m. on the 30th. in that case, security did encounter her and did escort her back to the back of the complex, or back of the compound, and then at 4:14 we have her on security camera, and then of course on 10:58 we have her on security camera, and then of course at 2:02 a.m. on the 31st we have the vehicle leaving.
So at any of those times, you said that person of interest tried to get into the complex but was stopped by security?
On one occasion that we know of.
And then she was escorted off at 3:03, escorted, so that's 2 times with security?
No, I'm sorry, one time. One time on the 30th. I'm sorry.
How was security made aware of her presence?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
How was security made aware of her presence?
Oh, that was the case where the lady, no, I'm not sure, I don't have an answer to that. That's where security escorted her off the property. I'm not sure I have an answer for that one.
We have time for one more question.
Well, we're really having a hard time with the timeline
Okay.
here, though. So you got her 3 o'clock, and then shortly after that, escorted off the property.
Yes.
You got her on camera at 4, a little after 4.
Yes.
Then you got an encounter at 10:58. Is that when the keys were taken? from
That's
the car and
correct.
mailbox?
That's correct, at
So
10:58.
3 hours after that is when the Getman's car leaves the
That is correct. That is correct.
Is that a Kia Soul?
I'm sorry?
Is their car a Kia Soul?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Chief, the security called you guys at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, I think it was, right? And so how did security figure out that they needed to go to this apartment and check on these people, or how did that come about?
Security, you're talking about on the 31st.
Yeah.
Security called us at about 4 p.m.
Okay, yeah.
Because we had a neighbor called security
Okay.
and said there's something suspicious here. So security went to the residence, Mr. and Mrs. Getman's residence, and then they opened the door and saw a scene and called us.
Okay, did they go to other apartments before they got to the Getmans and figured out what was going on, or how did they figure out that was the Getmans?
They got a phone call. They got a phone call from a resident, and that they were concerned because the garage door was open. Yeah.
Chief, do you have any of the murder of an Asian couple inside your store 2 years ago?
I talked about that one yesterday in another. He's referring to a homicide, a double homicide at the TNN Market on Grandview 2 years ago, and I characterize it as this. We have cold cases, warm cases, and active cases, and I have been briefed as recently as a couple of weeks ago that is an active homicide investigation.
And Chief, once again, on this present case,
Yes.
manner of death.
I'll hold that until we get the full coroner's report.
Or whether or not you found any type of weapon that may or may not have been used.
Let's hold on those details for a few more days.
Thank you all for coming. We're
I have
finished.
a question for the
Did she walk
FDLE.
in? How did she get on the property once again?
I'm sorry?
How did she get on the property? Is it that easy just to get in Waterman Village?
I'm sorry, say it one more
How
time.
did she get on the property? Is it that easy just to get on Waterman Village?
I
property?
understand there's some gaps in the fencing in the back.
That's how she got in.
This for
I understand that.
For the FDLE, how long does it take you to get back DNA results? Because I know you guys your lab's really busy.
So I'm not going to pretend to be a scientist, but I will tell you that I spoke to the supervisor of our DNA lab as recent as about 2 hours ago. We have put a rush on this, on the evidence that's been submitted. I've been advised that we hope to have some standards returned as early as tomorrow. Now, understanding the DNA process, you'll get standards back from items that you submit, but those standards are only as good as the standards you have to compare them to.
Right.
So we will get the standards that we, from the evidence that's been submitted, and then we will start the process of identifying those standards against other known standards, if that makes any sense.
Yes, sir.
So obviously there'll be standards from the victims because they were in the house, and then we will, through process of elimination and then the process of identifying other standards, we'll work towards the final conclusion, if that answers.
I assume that the police will do a swab or whatever of this person of interest court, I assume.
Okay, so obviously you're welcome to assume, we're not going to, as the chief said, we're not going to go into our investigative techniques. I think everybody knows that if you have a subject, a person of interest, and you have the ability to secure DNA from those individuals, we'll go through the legal process, we'll secure those samples, and then we will work standards against, that'll be a known standard, right, at that point. So we also have databases we can check where there are already some known standards. Most of you are familiar with the CODIS database. So we'll go through that process along with several other investigative components that we're working in conjunction with Mount Dora Police Department. That answer?
Yes, sir. And so the standard things you're looking for, your forensics, fingerprints, blood evidence, DNA, hair, just anything, all those things and more probably that we didn't know about.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Does the person of interest have a criminal record in any other state that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. But this is unfolding very rapidly. In fact, to be completely open, we only positively identified her a very short time ago.
Chief, if a completed date was completed, if a date was completed, would she have been off the property?
Say that one more time.
So that uncompleted fence on the property.
Right.
If that date was completed, would she have?
It's hard to know. It's hard to know. It's a construction site in the back, and it's hard to know. On a closing note, very important, this case is active, it's open, it's very fluid, it's ongoing. We're still looking for information. We're looking for information on this person of interest. So if, while I know I haven't passed on her photograph, that'll come soon, but if anyone has any information that will help us to carry this thing to a conclusion, the investigation and the prosecution, remember 1-800-423-TIPS, 1-800-423-TIPS. And again, as always, thank you for being a supporter of law enforcement, and thank you for being a supporter of the City of Mount Dora. Thank you very much.
What about a resident question?
Well, perfect. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious. So there's security there to protect the residents, and at 11-something, security sees this car and knows whose car it is, and it goes down to Service Road. Wouldn't that create some curiosity as to why these people were going down to Service Road at 11 o'clock at night, and wouldn't they go and try to check on them?
They actually didn't see a car that they should have recognized at 11. What they saw at about 2 a.m. is the green car that we now know is Mr. and Mrs. Getman's, and leaving. And whether or not they actually recognized that as their car or not, I don't know. But they did not see the car go down the service road. When they were following at 2:15, remember when she came back at 2:15, they saw her, and what they believe, she turned down she walked down the service road. Thank you for correcting my.
You mentioned she was wearing distinctive clothing. What was she?
Let's hold on that till the next one. The next one should be the grand finale. As I've told you from day one, and I probably shouldn't have, because this was nothing but through hard work of the Mount Dora Police Department, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and of course our partners with the State Attorney's Office. This was through hard work. They broke this case wide open. Probably didn't have any right on day one to say, I'm going to absolutely get this thing solved, but now I can tell you with a degree of certainty that we're just going to have a successful conclusion. And again, I'm never without words. I want to repeat to the citizens, the City of Mount Dora is a safe community. It is probably the safest community in the country. I can't come up with a better example of a community that's better protected and well served by law enforcement. This incident was I believe random. I believe it was someone that was simply passing through, and it's a once in a lifetime event. So be safe. Always be aware of your surroundings, but enjoy what the City of Mount Dora has to offer and live your life. Don't let this make you change one bit of how you choose to live here in the city of Mount Dora. Again, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you in a couple days for sure.